Well, something else that I thought was very sad, and want to take a quick look back at this, is the Michael Cohen testimony last week. Did y'all get a chance to watch that, by the way?
I watched it all. I watched
You watched it all,
I wanted to call you, yeah. But I said, no, I'm not going to call him and interrupt him because I know you didn't want to miss a second of it. And I just wanted to hear how mad you were as an attorney.
Well, yeah, I was pretty ticked off because, the whole nature of it just felt so wrong to me. I mean, this guy, Michael Cohen, number one, he agreed to be Donald Trump's attorney. And when you agree to do that, you're supposed to keep the person's confidences. And this guy, I mean, when he was up there testifying, I mean, not only did he record his own client a bunch of times, which ethically is very questionable, and he said he had recorded, he thinks, over the years, maybe 100 different, incidences, not with just Trump, but with different clients.
Sounds like you're planning to do something bad to that person if you record them in advance.
Right. You're almost accumulating blackmail evidence, blackmail material to use against them. But to hear Michael Cohen kind of running through Trump's history and suggesting all of his suspicions, his suppositions, what may have been going on, things that made him uncomfortable. I mean, it was like a gossip column going through some of Trump's history, and it really is beneath the dignity of an attorney to behave like that. I mean, I was highly offended that Michael Cohen would do this to his former client. Now, of course, I'm sure that he was relying on something called the crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege, which is the attorney-client privilege doesn't apply to communications that are made for purposes of committing or covering up a crime or committing or covering up a fraud. So it wouldn't apply to those types of communications. Now, another thing that Cohen was probably relying on, and this was when it occurred, I thought this was really a mistake by the Trump legal team. And that is, if you remember, the Trump legal team waived attorney-client privilege with respect to some of or maybe all of its communications with Michael Cohen. And they did that because I think at the time they were trying to appear, number one, they already knew the prosecutors already had all those tapes from Cohen's computer when they raided his office, and they already had all those documents. So there's no putting that cat back in the bag at that point. So I think Rudy Giuliani, who's the one who announced this determination, they were trying to appear as though, hey, we've got nothing to hide, so you can spill the beans on us. But I personally thought at the time, I thought that's a mistake to waive attorney-client privilege. You shouldn't be asked to. There should be no requirement that you waive that. I mean, that's a privilege on which you rely. And one of the things that's sad to me as an attorney, and I don't really do criminal law. I mean, I've handled in my career maybe 4 or 5 criminal cases in total, and I only handle them when they're in a specific area of law, like unlicensed contracting, for construction contractors. And I know construction contracting and construction licensing very well. And so I have handled criminal cases against people where they've been accused of being an unlicensed contractor, and we've actually been very successful with those cases. But I don't take just any kind of criminal case, so it is very rare for me to handle a criminal matter. I know a lot of attorneys who handle criminal matters as a primary part of their practice, and one of the things that's happened over the past, 20, 30 years, but it's getting worse, is that the lawyer themselves is becoming a target. So if you're a lawyer who represents people who are accused of crimes, and remember, folks, until they're proven guilty in a court of law, we have to give them the presumption of innocence. That's part of our system. One, they deserve it because nothing's been proved. But two, we should afford to them the presumption of innocence. And the idea that you're innocent means that you should be able to have a criminal defense. I mean, you haven't been convicted yet. So why would we go after the lawyers who provide that criminal defense to you? You're legally entitled to counsel. I mean, that's what the Gideon versus Wainwright case was all about. You can't try somebody without criminal counsel. But nevertheless, we've got this situation where we've got Michael Cohen going on to Capitol Hill and spilling all the beans and doing things like making suppositions and talking about suspicions. I mean, that takes it even to another level, because now he's not just talking about communications that were had or specific acts that were taken by his client, Donald Trump. Now he's sharing what his suspicions are. And we don't even have the understanding of what the basis for those suspicions would be, because we didn't experience the entirety of the attorney-client relationship. But it's just so inappropriate, and I think it sets the standing of attorneys among the public. I think it sets us back significantly. I mean, I think people are going to wonder when they come in and they share something with their lawyer if they can count on that being protected. I mean, after seeing what Michael Cohen did, I think folks would reasonably conclude that maybe they shouldn't count on that. Because, you pick the wrong lawyer. That lawyer may be recording you secretly to use that against you in the future. And hey, by the way, if the heat gets too hot on them, they may turn on you. And part of, one of the things that we heard about in sort of the penumbra of Michael Cohen's testimony, because there's a lot going on with respect to that. And we do have a clip from that I'm going to share with you folks. The most important part of the Cohen testimony, it's very short, about 3 or 4 seconds. I've got that clip, and that is by far the most important thing that happened in the testimony. And we're going to share that with you. But before we get to that, you look at all of this stuff and you see just a total breakdown in the way the system is supposed to work. And it brings in a lot of the things that Sidney Powell says in her book, License to Lie, about the way federal prosecutors deal with these issues. And what we've heard is that Michael Cohen's wife was actually threatened with about a 30-year imprisonment sentence if Michael Cohen didn't agree to cooperate and toe the line. In other words, tell Congress what the Mueller folks and the prosecutors think happened here. So if you don't testify in accordance with what we think happened here, then we're going to bring these charges against your wife. Now, why would they bring these charges against his wife? Well, if you remember, what they were squeezing Cohen on was that he had overinflated some of his assets when he was trying to get a bank loan. So he'd basically lied on the loan paperwork about the value of his taxi medallions so that he could get a bigger loan from the bank. Well, that's bank fraud. Well, guess what the problem is? His wife signed on that loan as a co-borrower, which means she is part of the fraud, which means they could put the pressure on her. And I've heard that's what caused Michael Cohen to turn on the president. We're going to bring you the most important part when we come back.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. And Morgan, as we're sitting here talking about this whole situation with Cohen and with Michael Cohen, it makes me think to myself, you as an attorney, you must have a strong opinion about his behavior, what he did. Do you kind of put yourself into his shoes and say, if Donald Trump was your client, how would you have handled things? Does it anger you when other attorneys do certain things? Because I know you have a lot of care for your clients in particular. Sure.
Well, one of the ways I look at it is that, Michael Cohen talks about all these things that he thinks President Trump did wrong while President Trump was his client. Well, the attorney-client relationship is voluntary. In other words, the lawyer does not have to engage in advising and representing the client regarding things that the lawyer is ethically or morally or personally uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. And there's specific bar rules on that. So if at any point Michael Cohen was truly uncomfortable about anything that the president was doing, he could have exercised his right to say, listen, I don't feel comfortable with this. I think it's time for you to find a new lawyer to represent you regarding this matter.
Stop the presses.
Yeah.
Right before the break, you said that his wife was going to go to jail for 30 years.
Well, that's what I understand, right? I mean, I'm not right in the middle of the prosecution, so I don't know all the inside dirt, but I had read a number of places that is why Cohen actually flipped on the president.
I would sing like a canary.
It does make some sense, doesn't it?
You cannot put your wife in jail. You're probably going to jail. Your wife's going to jail. Who's going to watch the...
Right.
I would say the world is flat. And I got that straight from the president.
Pat George says
anything.
Right.
My wife is not going to jail.
Well, and doesn't that call the whole proceedings and the testimony itself into serious question?
Right.
I mean, he's
the
going to
benefit.
say whatever the prosecutors tell him to say, or else they're going to prosecute his wife.
I understand this a lot clearer now.
Yeah, now it makes some sense, doesn't
Yes.
it? Yeah. Well, and that also tells me, one, we really can't rely on what Cohen says because he's going to tell them whatever they want to hear to protect his wife.
And if there isn't something juicy enough, what's the point? So they have to have him say
Right. I mean, he's got to make these allegations. But the stuff about President Trump being a racist and a cheat and a con man, I mean, just to hear a lawyer say that about their clients to me is just really getting beyond the pale. I'm not saying that, lawyers don't represent people who are criminals and don't represent people who are bad business people and do shady things and all of that stuff, but it's not the lawyer's place to go out and publicize it. That's the key. The lawyer's job is to zealously represent their clients within the bounds of ethical advocacy, which does create some strictures on your conduct. You can't just do anything and everything. You have to follow the ethics rules, but within those bounds, you can zealously advocate for your client, whether your client's right or wrong. You can be the advocate. That's your job, and that's the way our system is set up. But this here, where you turn on your client after the fact, is just shameful. And, in the entire testimony, there was one line that was important. One line, Pat George, that was important in the entire thing, and we've got it for you right here. I want to play this for you, so listen carefully because this is not a very long clip, but this is the most important thing Michael Cohen testified about.
Questions have been raised about whether I know of direct evidence that Mr. Trump or his campaign colluded with Russia. I do not.
Okay, did you catch that? The
Nobody
question
does.
is whether he knows of any direct evidence that Mr. Trump or his campaign colluded with Russia, and he doesn't. He doesn't. Now, he goes on from there to claim that he has suspicions, and he goes into a lengthy recitation of the reasons for his suspicions. But, folks, suspicions aren't evidence.
And when
he
you say
admits,
suspicions, you could very well be saying, I mean, this is just conjecture, but what you've
Conjecture.
been told to say.
Yeah, right. Conjecture is what you're saying.
And
when
you're
you have
giving him something exciting enough that maybe that takes the heat off of you.
Right. But the most important thing in the entire testimony is that he admits he has no direct evidence. Now, if Michael Cohen, the president's personal lawyer, has no direct evidence of collusion with Russia, then what are the chances that there was collusion with Russia? Probably getting close to zero, right? I mean, he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have an email. He doesn't have some secret conversation that he recorded of the president. He doesn't have some document that he stole off the president's desk. He doesn't have anything. And he admits that. So, folks, there was no Russian collusion, just like we've been telling you for 2 years. And if there was, the evidence of it would have leaked out, just like everything else that's bad for Donald Trump gets leaked out.
He was mighty close to Donald.
He was, right. I mean, if he didn't find out about it, I don't think Donald Trump's a guy that keeps things very secret. I mean, did you watch his speech at CPAC?
He covered everything.
He's like an open book, man. It's like a stream of consciousness. I mean, it's almost like
Tell us
Donald
what
Trump.
you really think.
Yeah, he's laying down on the couch in our offices, and we're the psychologist, and he's just going,
Spewing.
just running with it, Free association.
And it looked that whole 2 hours. He was having a great time. He was loving it.
Wasn't he, though? I mean, he loves being the center of attention. He just loves being up there. But you're right. I mean, he was being energized by all of that crowd approval and crowd response. And he was sort of like gaining energy as the speech went on. And we want to cover with folks some of what he said because we got some great clips that are going to really kind of bring it home to you what it was like to watch the 2-hour CPAC speech, because I know most of you were probably doing other things on your Saturday than watching that.